What changes should a remake make from an original game? This is a question I've been asking myself as of late, and has really piqued my interest with the release of both the Final Fantasy VII and Resident Evil 3 remakes. Both of these titles receiving favourable reviews, however, have come under some scrutiny due to the changes implemented in each. Resident Evil 3 was released with content found in the original not being remade, whilst Final Fantasy VII had narrative changes that could affect how the future of the series of remakes will play out. Now, it's pretty apparent to most people what they expect in a remake, and I'm sure most people don't want any missing content or drastically changed elements. While this is beyond annoying for fans of these original works, my main concern is how these altered experiences would affect the viewpoints of these classic games to newcomers for these respective titles. A significant portion of people buying these games often have no experience with the original titles that these games are based on, and have often come into it due to the hype they hear about the original. Additionally, it's pretty commonplace for these people to use a remake as a way to cross a game off their backlog and feel no need to play the original work. Keep in mind that most companies don't make it easy to play the original forms of these games. For how much Capcom loves to port their games to every platform under the sun, Resident Evil 3 is not available on any of the current platforms, except for a PC release from 2000 that isn't available to download from Steam or the like, and takes some work getting it to run properly. Square Enix has thankfully re-released Final Fantasy VII and most of the other games in the series to most modern platforms with extra enhancements, but these situations are very few and far between. Expecting re-releases of every game for every platform is an unrealistic goal, as these re-releases take time and effort out of these dev teams, time and effort that could go into making new games. Capcom could re-release Resident Evil 1 to 3 on every platform tomorrow, but how many people would actually buy it? Because even if these games were available everywhere, most of the people who would buy it are just fans of the original versions playing through for nostalgia's sake. Most newcomers are turned off by numerous aspects of the original games. Resi 3 is a tank-controlled survival horror game with fixed camera angles, and Final Fantasy VII is a turn-based JRPG that isn't Pokemon. Only a small percentage of people actually put the effort into playing these games through. The design of the original Resident Evil games was to elicit fear from the player by limiting control and perception. These designs mainly coming from the limitations from the console, but becoming standard for the survival horror genre until consoles were more powerful and designers came up with new ways to scare the player. Yes, the fixed cameras and tank controls work to create tension, but they would most likely come off as an annoyance to newcomers who may not have that context. That's why a remake exists. Besides the fact that it can be difficult to get these older games working on newer hardware, Capcom was able to change the gameplay so it was more accessible to casual folk and thus make more money than it would be going through the effort of porting the original that only nostalgic and some core gamers would buy. However, a problem occurs when content from the original Resident Evil 3 isn't remade for this remake. In fact, numerous elements from the original game are missing, including locations, costumes, gameplay elements beyond the fixed cameras and tank controls, and even extra modes. Due to this missing content, the remake seems less complete than the original game and as such, doesn't live up to the expectations of the original or the previous remakes of Resident Evil 1 or 2. The old fans are right to be disappointed in this lack of content in a remake to one of their cherished games, but newcomers to this game will have their experience of this classic be undermined by a remake that feels less complete than the previous remakes. This in turn will become their perception of Resident Evil 3 and may make them even more unwilling to play the more complete original. Final Fantasy VII Remake, on the other hand, has implemented some narrative changes that have left the original players cautiously optimistic while leaving any newcomers to the game baffled. Playing the original Final Fantasy VII or knowing the storyline is the bare minimum you need to have done prior to playing this game, or narrative changes will not make sense whilst playing the game, and these players will have to go and watch a YouTube video afterwards to have it explained to them. These changes are confusing to say the least, as it is very likely that a significant portion of the players have never played the original, and this game seems to make an effort to cater to the original fans story-wise. However, this contradicts the changing gameplay style as the remake is an action RPG instead of a turn-based RPG, a decision done to gather a new audience as most fans would have liked it to stay the same. This philosophy seems to go against the traditional notion of a remake being a replacement for the original work, and in fact it may even cause more people to go out and try the original. Encouraging newer generations to expand their horizons beyond the newer releases is always a good thing, as who knows, they may find something there in those original titles that they like. In the end, remakes will continue to make changes to games that will most likely not please everybody, but that's the tightrope these developers must walk in order to update these games. Personally, I'm in favour for more changes from the original release, as long as that original is accessible to as many people as possible. It's good to update these games for a modern audience, but I think it's equally as important to show off the oldies to see how far we've come since the original releases. I am hopeful for the future of the Final Fantasy VII Remake. I could never get into the combat system of the original game, and had to watch a walkthrough online years ago, so it was neat to get a game that suited my combat needs. I do hope not much has changed from the original story-wise in the future parts, but like I said, sometimes change can be good, it's just a matter of what they change and how they execute it. But so far so good for Final Fantasy VII. I am also cautiously optimistic when it comes to Capcom's rumoured Resident Evil 4 remake. I really liked the first two remakes in the series, but even though I enjoyed RE3, the cut content was a bit too much for me. Additionally, Resident Evil 4 is one of my favourite games, so I hope Capcom puts a lot of tender love and care into it. According to the rumour that says it's in the works, the newly formed team is keeping a close eye on the Resident Evil 3 remake reviews, so that should be a sign that we're heading for greener pastures this time around. But hey, at the end of the day, as long as the game's enjoyable, changes should be fine. But these are just my thoughts on remakes in games. If you want, you can let me know yours in the comments, and I'd be happy to see them, agree or disagree. Until next time.